Hello students, welcome back in your science class. Hope you all are well. So let's start our chapter Materials, Metals and Non-Metals. In previous session of this chapter we have studied about some physical properties of metals and non-metals. In this session we will study some chemical properties of metals and non-metals. Firstly, we will see reaction with oxygen. You are familiar with the rusting of iron. When iron exposed in air, it reacts with air, oxygen and water and it forms rust. This formula is Fe2O3 dot XH2O. X is the number of molecules of water. Next, when magnesium reacts with oxygen, it forms magnesium oxide. So metals reacts with oxygen and forms their oxides. Similarly, non-metals also reacts with oxygen and forms their oxides, like carbon reacts with oxygen and forms carbon dioxide. Sulfur reacts with oxygen and forms sulfur dioxide. So metals and non-metals both reacts with oxygen and forms their oxides. But oxides of metals are basic in nature. These are basic in nature. And oxides of non-metals are acidic in nature. How can we test these are acidic or basic in nature? We will take a glass test tube and a spoonful of rust and put in test tube and dissolve it in water. Now take red litmus paper or blue litmus paper to check whether it is acidic in nature or it is basic in nature. So first we will take red litmus paper. When we dip red litmus paper in this solution, the color of the red litmus paper change into blue color. This shows that this solution is basic in nature. Now when we take oxides of magnesium and it dissolves in water, it forms magnesium hydroxide, which is basic in nature. We can also test by using red litmus paper. Now, how can we show that oxides of non-metals are acidic in nature? So, when carbon reacts with oxygen, it forms carbon dioxide. We collect this gas in a gas jar. And cover it with lid and dissolve in water. It forms carbon dioxide reacts with water and forms H2CO3. It is a carbonic acid. It shows that oxides of carbon is acidic in nature. Similarly, when sulfur dioxide reacts with water, it forms sulfurous acid H2SO3. So it forms acid, therefore these are acidic in nature. So oxides of metals are basic in nature and oxides of non-metals are acidic in nature. Let's see how metals reacts with water. Sodium is very reactive metal. It reacts vigorously with oxygen and water and produce a lot of heat in this reaction. Therefore, it is stored in kerosene. Mostly metals do not react vigorously with water. For example, iron reacts very slowly with water. Generally, non-metals do not react with water. Non-metals do not react with water. Though they may be react with uh, oxygen. So, such non-metals are stored in water because some non-metals reacts in air very vigorously, like phosphorus. When it is exposed in air, it catches fire, so it is stored in water. Now reaction with acids. How metals and non-metals react with acid. Generally, non-metals do not react with acids, but metals react with acids and produce hydrogen gas that burns with a pop sound. This pop sound indicates the presence of hydrogen gas. Presence of hydrogen gas. When metals reacts with acid, it forms hydrogen gas. Copper metal does not react with dilute hydrochloric acid even on heating, but it reacts with sulfuric acid. Similarly, non-metals do not react with bases. It forms complex compound when it reacts with bases. And when metals react with bases, it forms, it also produces hydrogen gas. Here are some examples like sodium metals react with hydrochloric acid and form sodium chlorides and produces hydrogen gas. Magnesium reacts with sulfuric acid and forms magnesium sulfate and produce hydrogen gas. Some non-metals do not react with acids. Metals reacts with some bases like potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide. All metals do not react with all bases. Aluminium is a metal which reacts with potassium hydroxide and forms potassium aluminate and produces hydrogen gas. This reaction does not take place with the aluminum hydroxide. Uh, Ammonium hydroxide, which is also an alkali. When a more reactive metal displaces less reactive metal from its solution and forms a new compound, this type of reaction is known as displacement reaction. I have taken one example, copper sulfate plus zinc granules. When copper sulfate reacts with zinc granules, formula of copper sulfate is CuSO4 and zinc granules is denoted by Zn. Copper sulfate solution is blue in color. When zinc displaces copper from copper sulfate solution, it becomes colorless because it forms zinc sulfate. This color is colorless and displaces copper because zinc is more reactive than copper, so it displaces copper from copper sulfate solution. When copper sulfate reacts with iron, it also forms iron sulfate and it displaces copper from copper sulfate solution. Copper sulfate solution is blue in color and iron sulfate is green in color. But when we take zinc sulfate solution and it reacts with copper, there is no reaction. And iron sulfate when reacts with copper, there is also no reaction because copper is less reactive than zinc. So it does not displace zinc from zinc sulfate solution. And copper is also less reactive with iron, so it does not displace iron from iron sulfate solution. So a displacement reaction takes place when more reactive metals reacts with less reactive metals and it displaces from its position. Metals along with hydrogen are arranged in a series called the activity series. This is the activity series in which metals are arranged in order of their activity. In this series, potassium is above the calcium. It means potassium is more reactive than calcium. Potassium and calcium both are above the sodium. So it means potassium and calcium are more reactive than sodium. In this way, some metals are above the hydrogen in this series. It means these metals are more reactive than hydrogen and it displaces, like sodium, when reacts with water, it displaces hydrogen from water and forms sodium hydroxide and this hydrogen gas. So in this way, less reactive metals do not react with more reactive metals and more reactive metals displaces less reactive metal from its solution. In next section, we will study about uses of metals and non-metals. That's all for today. Thank you. Have a nice day.